To our top story today, and with the Democratic Alliance quick out of the gates to deploy one of its most senior members to run for Johannesburg's mayoral chain, where does that leave the ANC? Well, does the party, wilting currently under its track record of corruption and poor service delivery, rely on incumbent Dada Morero to take up the fight against Helen Zille in next year's municipal polls? That's the question. Or does it deploy a candidate no one saw coming? Our News 24 journalist dabbling in local government politics as of late is Siyamtanda Capa. She joins us live now from the Eastern Cape. You may be asking why. Well, she's currently there on assignment to chat more now. She joins us live from there about the ANC's chances in Johannesburg. Siyamtanda, Unjani, why are you in the Eastern Cape?
Well, you know how it goes, Graham. I'm here with COCTA. We're looking at distressed or struggling municipalities. So it's just one of those oversights.
Fantastic. And of course, once your pieces come out on News 24, I can't wait to read them. Your big one of this morning, well done, by the way, ANC Miles bringing big gun leader to outwards, TA Zille in Joburg power game. I think let's start here, Siyamtanda. For those who don't know, the ANC, as I understand it over the last couple of years, they don't really announce their mayoral candidates straight out of the gates. They wait a while, and they actually rely a lot on the party's image to win local government polls. Rather than just putting out the candidate's face, left, right, and center on election posts. I have that correctly, right?
You do. You absolutely do, Graham. And in fact, they don't even announce a candidate at all. They wait until after the elections. And then in the lead up to the elections, they have these interviews. But it's always reserved for the chairperson, really. The regional chairperson usually comes out on top. But yeah, this is a major deviation from tradition for the party.
Right, because normally it would be the branches, the regional branches, that would put up their deserved candidate. Sometimes, it would be an ANC chairperson, as you say, that needs to be put as the front runner, and all branches and all regions really need to be in agreement and speaking from the same hymn sheet, right? But we know that the ANC in many different provinces just doesn't enjoy that same level of cooperation along its branches and regions as it once did, right?
100%. And this is also why usually the ANC's regional conferences are always so contested. So there's always a fight, and sometimes it even becomes violent because essentially you're fighting to be the boss in the municipality, because there's this automatic sort of transition from regional chair to boss in the province. And I think we see it also in at the provincial government level, that the party chairperson usually becomes the premier. It's only in special cases that it doesn't happen. So it's a very contested terrain. It's sought after. It's control of serious resources. And when it comes to Joburg, we all know how massive that budget is.
100%. I think the biggest in the country, right?
100%. Yes, it is. Absolutely.
You wanted to say something, Sia? Sorry, I cut you off.
I do want to say that with coalition governments, this arrangement has become tricky as well. Being poised to be the chairperson, it's not guaranteed anymore. So it's also why in Joburg, it's also very contested between Dada Morero and Loyiso Masuku, who are gunning for this position. Even though it's not guaranteed, the negotiation talks speak to who comes out on top in that arrangement.
And Morero essentially pointed Loyiso Masuku, who, by the way, for those who don't know, she's a woman, appointed her to a very key position, which is the finance mayoral committee member seat, which Dada had once upon a time, for a really long time, had sat in, right?
100%, absolutely. That's why their own competition or contest is rather interesting for Joburg, for the control of that region.
Yeah, it would be great also to see a woman candidate, vying for the top spot in most parties, not just the ANC. Okay, so what are you hearing now, Sia, from your ANC sources regarding the potential caliber of the ANC figure that the party's looking for to go up against Zille in Johannesburg following the recent ANC-NEC meeting? What are the little birdies telling you at this stage?
So this past weekend's meeting was to discuss the guidelines in terms of the age, in terms of qualifications, in just the kind of candidates they want to field when it comes to the local government elections. And obviously, Joburg is a big factor in the next elections. And as much as some people don't want to admit it, Helen Zille entering the space changed the game. And it definitely changed the game for the ANC because there is a sense from within the ANC leadership in the National Executive Committee that Dada or Loiso, both of them might not be up to the task of contesting Helen. And so my sources tell me that, look, the thinking is, well, it's being dressed up as we believe that bringing in Cyril Kaba to KZN worked for us. And so let's just replicate the same model. I even asked, is it not because of Helen? But they were like, no. So that's why I'm saying there's some sort of dressing it up. So the plan is to rope in someone hyper experienced, someone whose image is also a bit cleaned up, to someone who's a professional. That's what they called it, a professional to come in and do the job. Someone who's decisive. Cyril Kaba is known for being decisive in his leadership, and that's why they feel that model worked for KZN. So they believe that bringing in someone from parliament could work, and they're giving the responsibility, rather they want to, because I must be careful here, this hasn't been resolved, it's a conversation, it's being considered, but they want to give control to the top 7 to then decide on this, which is also another major deviation from how they do things.
Any names being sort of bandied about? I can't imagine a Parks Tau coming back into the fray. He's currently, as I recall, Trade and Industry Minister. I can't imagine that being the case, but definitely somebody who's perhaps heading up a committee in Parliament could reach the final lists. But no big names that you're aware of being bandied about?
Look, at this current moment, no names. I haven't heard any names yet, but it's going to be interesting. I mean, let's take, for example, and this is not something that's been said, but consider, for example, Josiento Ramakgopa, electricity minister, is doing a great job there, and the ANC is feeding off of it. But could they think of bringing him back to local government? Perhaps, I don't know. It's those things that the party will have to weigh up as it embarks on this.
What this is obviously telling us is that the party strongly realizing the current reality that it finds itself with the sliding scale of victory, not only in local government elections, but of course nationally as well. It's unprecedented times for the ANC. Some are calling the revelations at the Madlanga Commission as being the sort of death knell, the final days for the ANC. It either ships up or shapes up or ships out, right? What does this conversation about what you're hearing from your sources suggest to us about the caliber of Morero and Masuku and those traditional sort of big name Gauteng ANC figures as it stands? I can't imagine Morero is feeling a lot of love at the moment.
For me, it takes us back to what the ANC chairperson Gwede Mantashe said at the ANC roll call, where he said, "You sing very well, but capacity dololo." It sounds like the ANC leadership knows exactly what their own candidates and councillors and people are capable of. And according to what this conversation sounds like, they know very well that within the Joburg caucus, within the regional leadership, there isn't someone who's strong enough to take on Helen Zille and actually come close to what they need to control that city.
Right. And of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa coming to Johannesburg in the run-up to the planning and the logistics regarding the G20 summit and making those remarks going, things in Joburg don't look great. What are you doing, Mr. Morero? And then later, obviously, to address councillors en masse and basically say, look at what the DA does. They're a good symbol or case study of great governance on a local government level. All of these things are obviously fueling the conversations that are happening that we are just not 100% privy to, right? Did you see this? Some of the tweets by Morero, hitting the ground in terms of service delivery from Ria Vaya. He's announcing, station updates in Sandton. He's also touting the Lillian Ngoyi Street refurbishment as being something that's really fantastic at the moment that the city's doing. And you just need to go and look at the comments under some of the tweets. And again, I know that Twitter or X is not indicative of the state of play in South Africa as we know it, but have you seen some of the comments under it? People are just not necessarily sold. And some of the big sentiments are, why now? Why suddenly now? And of course, it's because we're heading into political silly season, right?
I do agree with you. With the Dada, I am always taken back to when he came in as mayor and he had a conversation with one of our reporters, Alex Patrick, and he told her that, look, I'm not here to change anything. Don't expect any immediate results. And since then, that's exactly what he's been giving us as residents. It's frustrating as someone who lives in Joburg, because some people use X and social media as something to access your leader quickly. And that does, or the mayor's response is there. If you flag service delivery issues, he's going to be very nonchalant. It's very frustrating for residents, and those are your voters. A lot of them, they're on there, and I'm going to call it gimmicks. The election gimmicks that he's doing now, as we saw what happened in last year's elections, the same gimmicks that the ANC pulled with the transformers, with a lot of the things they were doing in the lead up to election, it didn't pay off because voters are not dumb. And I wish the mayor would recognize that.
Yes. We know we're more than 30 years into this democracy now. We're really maturing with the coalition politics on many different fronts. It's not a perfect model, but as you rightly say, Siyamtanda, people are understanding a lot more how these things work. And they're, with the revelations of the SIU affirming what News 24 had done in terms of the investigations into the Tembisa hospital scam, we can, more and more people are realizing, hey, the ANC might not be the party anymore for them. And these are potentially, traditional voters. Zille, meanwhile, she's been on the charm offensive. Did you see that Anele interview? What did you make of it?
I did. It was rather cringe for me to listen to it. From both sides, actually, for me. Unprofessionalism for both sides. Because we were listening to hear Helen's plan for Joburg, and you didn't get to hear any of it. I would have loved to actually hear substance. But to be honest with you, Graeme, I am sort of rationing my intake or my consumption of all Helen related coverage, because guys, the elections are still very far off, and
100%.
we're watching it closely. So I'm wary of Helen fatigue.
Yes, that's excellent. I love that. Because guess what? The Joburg news guys are now going to see what us as Cape Townians have been dealing with for a long time. It's the DA spin machine or the media machine in full force. I hope you're ready, because it might be early days, Siyamtanda, but you're going to get a lot of this DA PR campaign in full force, and it's going to be in our faces for a really long time. I mean, Zille's, and not only on the DA's own platforms, has been pretty much on every other platform that we've seen up and down the country. Yeah, and I like you say, I don't think there were any clear winners in that heated discussion with Anele. I think Anele didn't have all of her homework done, and likewise, I also felt like, and what do you think of this? I also felt like Zille had a backup. She was already coming into the interview swinging, whereas perhaps that wasn't necessary, right?
Mm-hmm. Perhaps for all of us, it's what not to do in an interview, hey? Listen in what not to do when interviewing someone.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to hear more of Zille's touted policies. Okay, any other candidates that we can think of in regards to the Johannesburg conversation at this time? Herman Mashaba, I think, would definitely be somebody that might potentially put their hand up again.
Look, I think it was so interesting that one of the Sundays reported that Lindiwe Mazibuko had approached Herman. She had an interest, but Herman was like, no. So I when I was reading the Sundays, I thought that was so interesting that at some point she was interested but didn't get the chance. I'm also looking to see who the newly formed Unite for Change is gonna field for Joburg. I expect Herman to take it on himself, though. He's hinted that if I don't find a candidate, I'll do it myself. And he has had a long rivalry with Helen, and he might just enter that battle himself, which is going to be also interesting to see. I mean, besides Joburg, other elements as well. The Action SA fielding Olani Kumalo, who's from Moja Loves Sizoktola. It's it's just giving signs of this campaign is going to be so interesting to follow, Graham, and I'm excited for it. We're going to see a lot of populist garbage being spewed, but we have a voter that's very, very, very hyper involved. They're excited. They are interrogating everything. They're not just eating up everything that people say. So I'm finding something very different with this election, even though it's so early.
It is a little bit early, and some would argue that it's usually the case that the first front runners or the first candidates to put up their names don't tend to do well in the long term. That is like a sort of theory about things. Meanwhile, we have forgotten, Sia, about good Rise Mzansi and Bosa teaming up for a more centralized political option for next year's polls. Any murmurations about or reaction to this in Johannesburg as we speak?
I don't know in the context of Johannesburg specifically, but a lot of people are saying they don't think that partnership is going to work. I don't have views on it yet. Look, it was bound to happen. People have always called for it to say, why don't you guys just come together and form one thing, because you look the same, you speak the same. So why not just come and form one thing? And I remember having a conversation with Songezo, and he was still saying that the chats are still very at an early stage, but in the next few weeks they're going to announce. So it sounds like it's been something that they've been planning for a long time. It's to be seen what it means for politics in the grand scheme of things, even the GNU. It's very confusing as well. I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know about you.
Yeah, 100%. The idea of centrist politics is really grand on paper, but I don't know what it means to the appetite for conservatism across the globe these days, especially in South Africa, where we've seen massive gains from a largely traditionalist conservative party like Umkhonto weSizwe, right? In KwaZulu-Natal. Some argue it's a one-election party, but who knows at this point? Anything can happen in the next 48 hours is what they often say. Let's end off here, Siyamtanda, and then we can let you go to that COGTA Eastern Cape briefing. There was this leaked DA internal poll that suggested that the DA had a little bit more of a favoritism over the ANC, although it's potentially maybe skewed from a DA perspective because it is a DA poll, which essentially like laid the groundwork for Zille to be the candidate in Jozi. Do you know about how much the ANC is taking that seriously? And just remind our listeners, as we end off, what the voter share in Johannesburg looked like in 2021 municipal polls.
Whether or not the ANC is taking it seriously, they always downplay polls. Always, always. I'm not sure how responsible that is, because if we're speaking to the DA's poll, and it is an internal poll, but the DA in the past they don't pump in money when success is not, or even something close to success or growth is not guaranteed. Let's give that to them first. And they've spoken to us about their methodologies in terms of their polls, and they are very, very, very close. Their margin of error is it's about 3%. So their polls they tend to be on the money. In terms of what these polls are also speaking about 37% support for the DA, while the ANC could get about 31. If you look at what the parties also got in the previous election, which was 36.3, 33.6 for the ANC and 26.14% for the DA. It's not, look, it would be a massive growth, but with the kind of issues in Joburg that could actually see people come out to vote. It's not a pie in the sky type of thing. If I'm looking at those numbers, it's very much possible. We've seen dramatic increases in voter support in local government elections.
Right. let's end off, and I thought I'd share this with you, and it's based off a piece written by the professor of sociology at WITS, Roger Southall, and he reminds us that if Zille becomes mayor, Siyamtanda, she'll be 75 when she gets the job next year, and if she does finish her one term, this is all hypothetical, she'd be 80 by the time she would finish a 5-year term at the helm of the city of Johannesburg, meaning that this might be her last chance at a big political position ever, given her age. What do you think of that?
I think if we've been watching Helen be in politics and do everything she's done, she looks like an overachiever. And if this is a serious challenge for her, and she's going to give it her all, I think. I mean, I think I respect her and the work that she's done politically. Having an 80-something-year-old mayor, because someone is 80-something years old now, it's Jacob Zuma.
True, hey? And I think this is why the young politicians like your Liam Jacobs, who defected from the DA to the PA, get a lot of attention, because I think there's also that element in South Africa of people going, where are our young leaders at this time? Siyamtanda, Nkosi kakhulu, I really appreciate it. I look forward to that update on the Eastern Cape Cogta briefings, if you will. I know that there's some good news with municipalities turning their fortunes around there, so I look forward to your reporting. Thanks so much for joining us on the lead.
Thank you.